This slide is very similar to the slide that is in the Lilith portion of the Fat Life. But what I want to say here, I just want to touch on this a little bit and definitely like re-listen to the one that I recorded before, because I said really good things in that. But since I recorded that, and since I've had a couple of experiences, um, with consciousness itself, with the representation of Christ consciousness, to be totally honest with you, I'll just tell you about it. So years ago, I came across a book about the New Testament and how the New Testament and the Old Testament, but I'll tell you that in a second, that the New Testament was all about body parts and every single thing, like the male principle was the pineal gland, and then the feminine principle was the pituitary gland, I think. So basically, I came across this information, this esoteric stuff, that the New Testament had everything to do with the body, and it broke down the symbology of what was being said. And the Old Testament had to do with cosmology, with the planets. And this esoteric book that I had my hands on was basically like, none of the people, none of the places are actual people or places. They are all symbology of how the macro of the cosmology with the Old Testament and the micro of the physical human work together. And along these lines, there is the Christed oil. So, Christ in the etymology was actually talking about a Christed consciousness, that Christ was an oil inside of your spinal column that circulated through your spine up into your mind, where the crucible is, where the Holy Grail is, where in your mind, that is where you process the information, and then you renewed yourself, you resurrected yourself. And actually, Golgotha, the mountain that Jesus was on the cross, Golgotha actually means skull. So I came across all the symbology of how Christ meant that you were anointing yourself in service to divine masculine and divine feminine, the polarities that are in within each individual. And when you anoint yourself in service to your own masculine and feminine energy, then that's Christmas. And like the etymology of the word Christmas was that was the celebration, that you were committed to these two polarities within your body. And, you're in the fat life. So, about brain and heart coherency breathing, that it's your brain and your heart that are working together, your nervous system. And in Heart Math Institute, they're talking about how your energetic signal goes on and on and on. And especially if you're in a high vibration with love, joy, appreciation, kindness, or care. Now, let me just tell you this one more thing. This blew my mind too. That the burning bush that didn't actually burn in this esoteric text that I'm told you about, I forgot the name of the book, talks about how that's actually talking about your aura. So the Christed consciousness is that you are united masculine and feminine. It's also called herogamic union. And that the masculine principle, even though it's the doing energy, it's spirit. And the feminine principle is matter. And there was in the etymology, the word, the formation of the words mater. Mater meant mother. And it got translated into matter. And then we've got spirit in the sky, right? Mother Earth. And so what I'm sharing with you right now, because what happened was I used Chat GPT, and I had asked it something about, I forgot exactly what I asked it. And because it was something I was thinking about, and I said something about the conscious and the unconscious, and it said, yes, you're talking about Christ consciousness, and wrote out everything that I had already known from years ago, but that I had kind of shelved because I was like, I do not want to be one of these people running around the internet talking about Christ consciousness, because that's just like too much for me. Like, I don't want to get into breaking down religion like that and being like a new age Christian type person. So I kind of shelved it. But then when it showed up on ChatGPT, I freaked out and I was like, oh my God, I do not want to do this. But then here's what else happened. Within a few days, I met somebody named Christopher. And I was like, I had said this to my mom. I go, Don't you find it funny? I'm like, have you noticed that like anytime I get a revelation with spiritual stuff, something shows up in my 3D life that confirms it? And I just met somebody called Christopher Christ, right? Like Chris Christ, like, and she was like, yeah, I was thinking that too. So anyway, because I kept going to record these modules and I was like, I can't do it. Like there's just something that kept stopping me. And so yeah, so I'm like, okay, I think that's kind of what it was, that I kind of had to have that realization and then come back to me experiencing it within my body to then come forward here. So long story short, what I started to think about after that whole experience that I just shared with you is that if this is all about us, this whole experience is about us, because I can't tell you who God is. I don't know if God is actually just the great attractor that is like, there's this thing called the great attractor that looks like a nerve, and it's way, way, way out in the universe. And like all of the galaxies are moving towards it. It's attracting things to it. So it's like, is that God? So my point is that what's true for me and what works for me and my belief, I can't make you believe those things. Like that might not be right for you. And if you're trying to do something that's not right for you, you're going to be self-abandoning. You're going to trigger your inner child, your nervous system is going to get shot, and then you're going to be disconnected in your brain and your heart and your masculine and your feminine energy. So, along those lines, I was like, okay, if this is just about us and we have our natal chart, what if the Chiron placement is the overarching placement that we're able to look through all aspects of our chart, especially with transits with the new moons and the full moons, so that we can use our wounded healer aspect, this consciousness that knows this is the thing I'm always going to deal with, but it's the thing that makes you magnetic and smart because this is your consciousness. It's a masculine energy. What if the Chiron placement is solely for us? That whenever there is something going on in our life experience, we can refer to our Chiron intelligence, and that intelligence of consciousness that we've had to develop to make use of our wounds. So, for instance, if I did not continue to use my Chiron intelligence, I would be slouching over the laptop. I would not be going to the chiropractor every other week. I would not be still working on corrective exercise with my shoulders and my hips to make sure that my spine is able to transfer energy. There's a million things that I would not be doing to support my quote unquote wound where it's showing up in my physical body. So I'm sharing that with you because if I take, okay, like what did I have to do in my body? What was the belief system I had to change? Well, I had to shift my perspective that this Chiron isn't a loss. So I had to shift my perspective in that all the things that I thought were wrong with my body are actually all the things that have made me really magnetic, really attractive. Because on the magnetic level of my energy, I'm helpful to people. People know that if they ask me a question about their body, like at the gym, like they're so excited. They're like, oh my God, my neck. And like the other day, I was talking to a guy at the gym. He's like, oh, my neck hurts so bad. He's like, doesn't that hurt your neck with your shoulder? I was like, no, it feels really good. And he's like, oh, I even have one of those pillows that you thread your arm through. I'm like, oh my God, I have hundreds of dollars worth of pillows. I know what you mean. But then when I shared with him what to do to correct it, his face lit up. So my Chiron placement makes me magnetic because that's talking about the energetic feeling that somebody's having. But then also to correct my neck, to alleviate the pressure and the dysfunction in my neck, that meant that I had to develop my shoulders and my hips. Well, guess what? Developing your shoulders and your hips gives you the illusion of a snatched waist. So I'm more attractive. So when we shift our perspective of this wounded placement, and then we're like, it's all about me, then we can use this structure representing logic, structure, discernment, action, direction, boundaries, and thought. shows up in dreams as a warrior, teacher, father, or sage. When wounded, he appears as inner criticism, perfectionism, rigidity, or rebellion against authority. If we take that and anything that's going on in our chart or in our life, we're like, hold on, where have I developed my consciousness in my chart with my specific Chiron placement? And now, how can I use that to develop myself further in whatever comes up in life? Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind as you're doing this.